Hello, everybody. Welcome back to We're Talking Movies. As always, I'm Andrew, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Cade. And today, folks, today we have a really special one for me because today we are talking about my favorite movie of all time. We are talking about Jaws from 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg. And oh my gosh, do we have a lot to say about this movie. So without any further ado, let's get right into the pros. Cade, what is your first pro you want to bring up for this absolute classic?
Well, I think my first pro is definitely going to have to be just the story of this film. The story is great because it's not just a monster movie, if you know what I mean. The story of this movie blends together many different genres with the monster genre. It works really well as a horror film. It also works really well as an adventure film, which is definitely a recurring thing in many of Spielberg's films. A lot of his films have some element of adventure to them. And this movie also blends together drama and comedy into the story, which is really great because it really helps give the movie life, which I really like. Would you agree?
No, I completely agree. I love the story of this movie, and this is actually considered, from what I've read, pretty universally to be one of the few examples where the movie is actually better than the novel it's based on. Because the novel by Peter Benchley, there is some major differences. Number one, the novel actually takes place on the Jersey Shore, not any kind of fictional island, which is basically Martha's Vineyard. Let's call a spade here. And other parts of it, it's like the book had some parts that Steven Spielberg himself kind of thought was kind of pointless, so he cut out. Like in the book, there's an affair between Hooper and Mrs. Brody that seemed to kind of go nowhere. And the climax of the movie was a lot more simplistic. Basically, the shark just dies after being harpooned by Quint. Yeah, no, I think again the story in this movie really is just pretty good because it's actually pretty simple. Okay, shark is here attacking everybody. How does the people in charge of protecting the island respond to it? Which is actually a great way to lead into my first pro, which is I need to talk about the big three. That would be Brody, Quint, and Hooper. Holy crap, what a great trio of main characters. Steven Spielberg is really good at directing trios. Does that make any sense?
It does. Yeah, you're totally right. And I think because of the fact that they're all written so well and the fact that all three of them give such great performances, it really helps the audience get invested in them as characters, which is always nice.
Yeah, especially because everybody has such a distinction in their character. And everybody's got, their little quips and quirks. You got Martin Brody, he's this rugged everyman cop who he knows he's in way over his head. He doesn't even like the water, but he knows he has a responsibility to protect those he's sworn to protect on Amity Island. So as a result, he's going to do everything in his power to do his job. Next up, you got Hooper. He's this incredibly intelligent marine biologist who knows exactly what he's talking about all the time, but he's a little bit full of himself. He's kind of he's a bit of a yuppie. He's from a wealthy background, but he does pull through in the end thanks to his knowledge in sharks and being a marine biologist. He knows what he has to do. And then finally, you got Quint. What do I have to say about this legendary film badass? He's a battle hardened, crusty fishing boat captain who just oozes coolness and badassery, but he's also got a lot of tragedy and sadness in his past, and that kind of helps flesh out his character and his motivations and his obsession with taking out sharks. But he's also not completely obsessed. He does realize, okay, I'm putting people in danger. I need to back off.
Yeah, and I think that because of the fact that we're able to get attached to these characters, it really helps us fear for them as they go after the shark. We want them to survive. We want them to make it out alive. And this is something that I think some monster movies and horror films kind of miss the mark on. Sometimes we have these characters who are in it and we're just thinking, okay, I don't care about this character at all and I just want them to get eaten by the shark or whatever. But this movie manages to pull it off really nicely by helping us get attached to all these characters because of how well written they are and how great the performances are. So I give the movie a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, no, this is an excellent trio of main characters to follow. You fall in love with them over the course of the movie. And honestly, I also just want to make a comment on how much I love the bickering between Hooper and Quint in this movie, because apparently Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw genuinely really hated each other while filming this, so that just back and forth, bickering, name calling, sniping at each other was actually from a place of real disdainment for each other. But I don't know. Again, it's three great characters you really do fall in love with, and again, you want to see them all survive. And that's in the fact that Quint's the only member of the big three who doesn't make it. You feel that when he does get bitten in half by the shark. Though there is some supporting characters in this movie. I kind of love too that I need to highlight. You got Lorraine Gray as Mrs. Brody. She's this very loving and supporting sort of wife to her husband. But they also have like an actual human marriage. They do bicker a little bit. They don't always see eye to eye. They don't talk to each other all the time. They talk about wanting to have sex all the time. It's very human, and it's actually just a kind of a breath of fresh air to see.
Yeah, and I think aside from the characters, one other pro I do have about the story is I love how we don't really see the shark until halfway through the movie. And that was actually one of Spielberg's requests to the studio when he was making the film. The reason I think that this works really well is because while we don't see the shark right away and we have to wait a certain amount of time, the first half of the movie really does a good job taking its time and showing us the damage that the shark has caused. This works really well because it makes the buildup feel more satisfying and it feels even more intense because of that.
Yeah, it's the less is more policy, and it's done to perfection in this movie. And apparently that was done out of necessity because apparently the shark, the mechanical shark they had, was a colossal pain in the ass to work with, and it broke every 5 minutes. So as a result, Spielberg and company had to kind of minimize its usage, and as a result, it does, like you said, it ups the anticipation. You don't see the shark for 25 minutes at a time. It builds up the anticipation of, okay, when's it going to attack next? When are we going to see it next? And then you finally see it in its full glory, what, halfway, 2/3 of the way through the movie when it attacks the guy who falls out of the rowboat. Again, it does a really good job at building tension.
Yeah, and I think that another pro for me is definitely Steven Spielberg's direction. All right, so I'm going to be honest with you, Andrew. Right off the bat, this is not my favorite Steven Spielberg movie. That title probably goes to Saving Private Ryan. However, I will agree that this is definitely one of his best and most iconic films. And when we ranked our top five favorite horror films last year, this was your number one. And for you, as such a big fan of this movie, would you say that it's Spielberg's best film?
Well, like I said in our top five favorite horror movies review, that is a very difficult decision to make because Steven Spielberg is one of the most talented directors in Hollywood history. I don't think anybody will disagree on that. One of the most decorated and one of the most beloved. But yeah, no, this is a great horror thriller. Indiana Jones is a great, trilogy of action adventure movies. Schindler's List is a great historical drama. Saving Private Ryan's a great war movie. It's really damn hard to pick a best of all time from one of the absolute greatest directors to ever live. So, like I said in our horror movie review, that's a really difficult decision to make. Would I say this is his absolute best? Oh God, I don't think I can say that. I think I would have to say either Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan, but this is still my favorite of his movies.
I understand. And I think that aside from Spielberg's direction, which is definitely one of the reasons why this movie is such a classic, another reason that makes it such a classic is definitely John Williams' iconic score. John Williams' score is probably one of the best things about this movie, and it probably always will be. It's definitely a timeless score. And I would argue that it's one of the best things that John Williams has ever created as a composer.
It really is. And basically, this is the most talented composer in film history. And somehow he managed to create an instantly iconic, imposing death march out of a simple two-note piano trill. Yes, the Jaws theme has been parodied to absolute death. It has been, made fun of and mocked and parodied, but that is just because it is such a good theme. It is so simple, but it's so imposing. It's incredible just how well it works, and it definitely deserved its Academy Award. It won for Best Original Score.
And even Spielberg himself claimed that 50% of the movie's success was because of John Williams, which I totally get.
Again, it's so simple, but it works so well. It's lightning in a bottle, in my opinion. Kind of rare, just stars aligning perfection. I got some other pros I want to bring up, and that is just the instantly iconic scenes and lines in this movie. In my opinion, the opening shark attack is brilliantly done. The fact, again, they don't show the shark, but it portrays terror really well because it doesn't show the shark, but she's screaming, she's being thrashed around. It's intense. The attack on Alex Kittner and all the very deep emotional moments after that. The last stand of Quint where he's like just desperately kicking at the shark's nose, trying to keep out of its mouth and then eventually failing. And then let's talk about, the instantly iconic lines in this movie, apparently many of which were improvised, which makes it even better in my opinion. You're going to need a bigger boat, which was improvised by Roy Shire. And then my favorite, my opinion, one of the most badass lines in film history, smile, you son of a bitch. And then blows it up by shooting a scuba tank. Just what a great way to end a movie.
Yeah, and I think that aside from all that, another pro that I will talk about really quickly is definitely, I just love the setting of this movie. That's definitely always been a standout for me. And actually, for you and me, obviously, as New Englanders, is this part of the reason why this movie has stuck with you for so long?
It's definitely part of it, and again, that's why I'm really glad they changed the setting. Because again, in the original novel, it actually takes place on the Jersey Shore, which would have made for a vastly different movie. But I think the idea of putting it on an island, especially one that's not heavily populated like Amity is presented as, it kind of almost adds to the build up in tension because it gives a sense of isolation. It's like, okay, we can't call the cavalry to come save us because we're basically on our own here.
Well, tell you what, why don't we get into the few cons that we have with this movie? Do you want to start?
I will. I do have one con, and weirdly enough, it is also tied to it. It's the shark when it's on screen. I know I just spent minutes gushing about how much I love how the less is more policy in this movie and how it does build up the tension so well. But yeah, when you do see the shark on screen, it does look a little bit jank. It hasn't aged terribly well. You can definitely tell, like, oh, that's clearly not a real animal. That's clearly something made of fiberglass and animatronics. But yeah, that's not going to really impact my score too much. Again, it shows its age, but again, this movie is what, 50 years old now?
49 years old.
49 years old. So the fact that it only looks jank and it doesn't look just downright god awful, I think is a testament. It's not really going to impact my score that much, though. Do you have any cons you'd like to discuss?
Not many. I do have just one big con with this movie, and that is the character Mayor Larry Vaughn. This character always annoys the hell out of me every time I watch this movie. This is nothing against his actor, Murray Hamilton, but instead just the fact that this guy refuses to close the beach throughout the entire movie. And look, I understand that he's supposed to be this greedy official, but with all the signs that you see throughout the movie that there's this dangerous shark or some kind of sea creature out in the ocean, this guy still refuses to close the beach and just lets more people die just so that he can make some money.
I agree with you that he is very dumb and presented as very greedy, but I don't know, just how dumb and how greedy he is, it kind of makes him memorable in my opinion. So I actually kind of wanted to talk about him in the supporting characters section because I do kind of love just how greedy and idiotic he is. Like he's a complete dunce, since like this guy's in charge of the town. Here's one that in all honesty, should be a con, but really isn't for me. This movie has not one, but two of the most infamous moments of extras stealing the scene when they're not supposed to. And I think you know what I'm talking about. First off, you got the gentleman who the scene is, Alex Kittner's just been attacked on the beach and everybody's supposed to be panicking, running into the water to get their kids. And then you see this one guy who's just frolicking in the water, just having the time of his life. It's like, okay, somebody either didn't read the script or just decided to go rogue on that one. And then the other one that always comes to mind is they reel up the shark and Hooper's like, "What is it? It's a tiger shark." And the guy's like, "A what?" Again, that should be a con because in my opinion, extras really aren't supposed to ever steal the show like that. But it's just too damn funny for me to consider it a con. I have to put it as a pro. It's just too damn funny to me.
Well, with all that, on a scale of 1 to 10, and I already know what the answer is going to be to this, but what would you give this movie?
Let's see. This is going to be a hard one. I think I'm going to have to give it a 10. It's, again, my favorite movie of all time. It still holds up as one of the best films from one of the best to ever direct. It's a universally beloved classic. Yeah, what else could I really give it? What about you?
I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I will give it either a 9 or a 9.5. Well, I think it's a great movie, and I think it's definitely one of Spielberg's best. It's still not one of my favorite movies, not my favorite Spielberg film, but I will agree that it is a masterpiece. So yeah, I think I'll give it 9.5. I think I'll give it that score.
Okay. I can definitely see where you're coming from on that one. I'm just kind of fanboying more than actually reviewing this movie, aren't I? All right. Well, on that note, thank you all very much for tuning in. And please make sure to like and subscribe. And also make sure to follow We're Talking Movies on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. And we will see you all next time.